Thanks, Carol. So the next guest is my business partner, Al Cini. He is a quant with a heart. Do you know what that means? A guy who is an analytical guy, but he's got a heart. And for the last, I don't know, probably a dozen or so years, he's been developing this scientific tool to help teams work better together, performance-wise. And he's going to ask and answer the world's most powerful question. And then he's going to give you some tips on some of those answers. Welcome, Al Cini.
Joe, nice to see you. I want to thank all my friends at RVN. I want to thank everybody here for coming. Thank you all very much. I am, as Mark said, I'm more of a quant than a speaker, so I'll try to be as entertaining as possible, given my own personal limitations. What I'm going to do over the next couple of minutes is teach you how to ask the most powerful question anybody ever asked anybody, which means in a minute or two I'm going to get to what the question is. This question was developed as part of the research that Mark laid out, and that was research into what makes people want to do things, especially within teams. Now, a team could be a department within a company, it could be a whole corporation, it could be a family. So there are a number of applications of this, what we call the incorporating question, and I promise I'll be explaining that to you in a minute, but first I'm going to tell you where the question came from. When I was a kid, and this is going back to like Benjamin Franklin's days, I was terrible at sports. I was awful at sports, but I did have one gift. I was the kid who was able to get all the other kids out of their houses and onto the street and playing. So that was my gift. My gift was, however I did it. All these kids who all had different plans for the day would all come out and do what I wanted them to do, which was basically play a game that I really sucked at for the most part. And so when they'd choose up sides, I'd usually end up the umpire. Every now and then I'd get an at-bat, but I actually had more fun than I think any of them did because I just enjoyed getting things going and keeping them going. Okay, now when I got to graduate school, I was graduate school for social psychology. Part of the research we did was in conflict studies. How do people get along with each other when they're arguing about something? And my core skill there was that I never really cared much about the subject at all. I didn't care what it was they were arguing about. What I cared about is everybody engaged in that subject? Are they talking about it? Now, my department chair used to call me a natural facilitator. And he said it was a gift that not too many people have. You have a way of getting people all spun up about something without jumping into the middle of it yourself. Make sense? Now, when we say a question is powerful, what we mean is it has the ability to get something started, and it has legs. It can keep something going, and that really is the power of a question. Now, let me lead off by explaining some questions that are not very powerful. There's a pretty well-known sales expert by the name of Mark Hunter. Do I have that right? Mark Hunter. And he talks about how you can ask a question of somebody to try to engage them in what you're trying to talk about. And the lowest powered kind of question you can ask is a question that you already know the answer to. Like, hey, Al, do you know that 1/3 of all employees are not engaged in their work? Or, hey, Al, do you know that 2/3 of all projects in corporate America fail, don't reach their goals? I mean, that's a question, obviously, that the person who asks the question knows the answer to. The goal of that question is to impress the person you're asking with how much you know. The power of that question lasts about 5 minutes. After about 5 minutes, it's pretty clear to me you're trying to impress me with what you know, and I'm not sure that I really want to talk to you anymore, and I'm looking at my watch. You guys all follow me? Okay. The next level up from that is asking a question that the other party knows the answer to, but you don't. So, for example, hey, Al, what is it that keeps you up at night? That's a famous question we ask when we're trying to figure out what somebody is really worried about. Or, hey, Al, do you really believe that you and your executive leadership team are all on the same page, or that your people are rowing in the same direction? That's a question that will get you 5 more minutes from me, because I have to think about the answer before I can share that with you. But as soon as I figure out that the only reason why you're asking that is because you're trying to sell me something that solves that problem, I'm looking at my watch. Make sense? The most powerful question you can ask anybody is a question that neither of you knows the answer to. That's kind of a challenge because it's hard to compose a question like that. I mean, coming up with a question that's relevant. I mean, it can't just be a goofy question about astronomical theory or black holes. It's got to be a question that actually matters. And it's got to be a question that's engaging enough for both of you to want to explore the answer together. Okay? We're now far enough into this talk for me to share with you the question that we discovered is the most powerful question anybody ever asked. You ready? Okay, think about it in the context of your family. But remember, your family could be a department inside of a company, it could be a whole company, it could be a baseball team. What I want you to do is to think deeply about that whole organization. I want you to think about all of it, all the people in it, all the things it does, all the tools it uses. I want you to think about all of that as though it were a single person doing its best work on its best day to keep all of its promises and reach all of its goals. Now, normally when we incorporate a company, we think we need an accountant, we think we need a lawyer. I mean, these are all things that you generally do need. We don't really pay much attention to what it is we're creating when we pull a group of people together to do something. We really don't think about the change we're trying to make collectively in the world. You guys all follow me? Okay, so when you think about an organization as though we're a single person, now all of a sudden you're giving it an identity. You're giving it a character, you're relating to it, you're meeting somebody sometimes for the first time. If you're a family-owned business and you're 3 generations in, this question forces you to remember why your grandfather or your great-grandfather started this thing 130 or 140 years ago. It forces you to remember that, to try to think back to that. If you're a partnership, it forces you and your partner to think about what it is you're trying to accomplish in this partnership, together, especially. And the real power of that question, and remember that question, think about the whole team, could be a family, could be a department, as though it were a single person doing its best work on its best day. Every word is important in this question. It's all been studied out to keep its promises, all the promises that it makes, and to reach all of its goals. When you get that picture in your head, you start getting answers from the person that you ask this of. And those answers include attributes, and if they're in the healthcare delivery business, you'll get attributes back like caring, or compassionate, or careful. That's typical for healthcare. If you're asking that question of somebody who runs a management consulting firm, you'll get answers back like decisive, or focused. If you're asking that question of a research company, you'll get answers back like analytical, or deeply knowledgeable, or expert. And if you're asking that question of an entertainment company, you'll get answers back like funny, engaging, inspiring. All those answers add up to a personality profile for a group that identifies that group's core role model. One of the things we've learned in our research is that the stronger the role model in the center of an engaged company is, the more effective that organization becomes. In other words, when you ask that incorporating question of a group of people that are working together on a team, and you get a lot of really different answers back, that's a group that will typically report that they don't get along well, that they're not engaged in their work, that they're having difficulty making sales, that they're losing money. But when you get an answer back from the people on a team that are similar, when everybody sees the same role model, and what we learned is that at the center of every really effective group, team, organization, there's a role model that everybody wants to be more like. Everybody aspires to become. And this is tapping into something that's very deep in the human soul. You guys all with me here? Okay, this is important. Because the reason why people buy things and the reason why people want to work for you are the same reason. They want to buy from you and they want to work for you because they believe that will make them a better version of themselves. That better version of themselves is embodied in the role model that represents your organization. The way you behave as an organization is your brand. The pride you take in the work you do is your culture. That's what we call this. We call this brand and culture alignment. Even if you don't use our process, use the incorporating question. And remember, when you start getting those answers, write them down. For each one of the answers you get, each attribute, write down a skill set or a behavioral trait that goes along with that attribute. And what you're compiling there is a code of conduct for this organization that embodies its desire to become the better version of itself that its role model represents. So, think of your whole organization as though it were a single person doing its best work on its best day to keep all of its promises and achieve all of its goals. What you'll get back from that is information that informs your marketing strategy, information that informs your HR strategy, and by the way, HR and marketing are the same department. Whether you knew it or not, in the 21st century, that's definitely true. The reason why people want to work for you is the same reason why people want to buy from you. When you tap into that kind of depth and you use that knowledge in a deep way, then you own that conversation. And in a world where everybody's trying to get the last word, I hope you'll be able to use some of this advice to see that the real power is in the first couple of words that drive a conversation. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Mark.
Great job.
That was fun.
Great job.
Thank you.
That was great. He's my partner. He was awesome. He was like, give him a hand.